Welcome to the Fashion is Cool podcast, where we explore fashion's business side and the entrepreneurs behind it. Hosted by Dwight Carter, your guide to diverse careers and inspiring stories in fashion.
Welcome to the Fashion is Cool podcast, where we discuss the multi-careers in fashion through the minds of our guests. I'm your host, Dwight Carter, and today's guest is Laura Sawyier, who is a psychology expert, wardrobe presence and confidence consultant, founder of LKS Styling, and now a TEDx speaker. How are you doing today, Laura?
I'm great. I'm excited to be talking about all things fashion, style, career, entrepreneurship, St. Louis. Let's do it.
Yeah. I've been super excited to talk to you because I'm very interested in your background and what you have created currently. So can you start by talking about how you kind of got into this whole fashion career?
Absolutely. I will answer that briefly by saying that I grew up with a dad in the Army and brothers, and I was a competitive downhill skier, and I always loved design and fashion, and I played with my Barbies, and I made a lot of outfits for them. But I also didn't believe that I had the sort of pedigree or the opportunity to ever work in fashions. Down deep, it was always a goal of mine. And I, for 10 years, was an event designer and marketer in New York. And 7 years ago, I went out on my own and I launched a styling and consulting business. So on one part of my business, I dress people for a living. I go into their closets and I literally help people decide what works and doesn't work for their body, budget, and lifestyle, and help them get dressed every day. And then on the other side of that, I am in graduate school and I'm researching psychology, but through the lens of the applied psychology of fashion, but more specifically through style, which we can talk about the differences as we get going here.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, man. You're busy. You were also named the most influential businesswoman in the St. Louis Business Journal. I think it was in 2023. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you? Like, how did, that's exciting.
Well, I wrote in, thank you. I wrote a newsletter about it, and it's sort of twofold. On one hand, I say we're not defined by our awards by any means, but at the same time, it's a nice thing to be recognized and acknowledged for years and years of work, and to, I think, pause in that moment and to look around and also see who else is recognized. The St. Louis Business Journal does this every year, and 25 women from the business community in St. Louis are recognized. And so to be able to look around the room and say, wow, I'm so honored to be among these women, that I'm being acknowledged for my work and they are in theirs. The second of three parts of that aspect of it is the acknowledgement as an independent consultant, being recognized as well. I think, we maybe are a little bit harder to find in our communities, in our business communities. And this is no insult to either sort of situation, whoever's working wherever they are. But, you often will see a lot of people on these lists. These are really impressive CEOs and marketing directors and, the list, attorneys, real estate people, philanthropists, the list goes on. And so to be acknowledged as an independent consultant makes me really happy, and also is like a yippee for my community of people who do things that we all do in different industries.
Yeah.
And then lastly, just to look broader beyond the people that are just being recognized, and to know that this is a moment for me to celebrate with the people that got me to the point where I'm at in my business, are helping me then move forward every day too. And to just celebrate them as a part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Let's talk about the psychology of style. Can you explain the concept of applied psychology of fashion and how it influences not just our wardrobe choices, but our daily behavior and commitment?
Yeah, so we'll start with the applied psychology of fashion, and then I'll go deeper into what I do through styling in that conversation. The applied psychology of fashion is really only about 10, 15 years old, the field as it is. And there's one school in the world at the London College of Arts that has an undergrad and a master's level accredited program in the applied psychology of fashion. And this was developed by psychologist Dr. Carolyn Mayer. And it is very broad from a fashion industry perspective, the applied psychology of fashion. So There is a focus on sustainability in the fashion industry collectively as a whole, globally in an industry. There is the well-being of designers and people who work within the field. There is the influence of media and social media and imaging that influence all of us and how we respond to that from a consumption perspective, not just in purchasing things, but also how we feel about ourselves. And then there's a part of it that I really focus on from a styling perspective that is a branch of this that is all about how what we put on our bodies influences how we feel about ourselves and impacts our performance, our moods, behaviors, and relationships. And style more collectively is more than just fashion. So style is about who you are at your core. And this is not any sort of insult to the fashion industry, but, sometimes, and a lot of people, I think there are maybe some negative connotations associated with fashion, right? Like overconsumption. Obviously sustainability, we could have a whole other podcast episode on that, though I'm not the expert on sustainability. We could also talk about it through it being something that maybe people feel like they're not included or they feel excluded from, or it feels frivolous to people. Style is all about everything that we're adorning our bodies with. So it's our clothing, it's our accessories, it's our gender, it's our personal, it's our religious and our cultural beliefs, all communicating to ourselves and everybody around us who we are. So it sort of peels that open a little bit more.
Do you have any examples of clients you've had that have changed their behaviors or even mental health because of what they're wearing?
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't go around saying that I'm changing anybody's mental health or mental well-being by any means, because I think that that is an area that, you want to be careful with. But I will tell you what I hear most often and pretty regularly from people is I get dressed with confidence now. I feel like myself. I feel like I know what my style is. I have such clarity on it. And the other part of that is convenience. Fashion for some people is fun. Fashion for some people is really frightening. I just sort of touched on that for a moment. And we all have to get dressed every day. And style really allows you to do the work, get clear on it. And once you get clear on it and you know what your style is, to build a wardrobe that works for you. And that's where the efficiency starts to come in. Because so many people walk into their closets and they're like, oh, I have nothing to wear, or I'm going to reach for the same thing that I reach for all the time. Yeah. Maybe you're someone that wears the same thing all the time, like Steve Jobs did. But, a lot of people, we want novelty in our lives. So being able to feel confident and feel really efficient when you get dressed, those are the two things I hear like clockwork all the time with clients, which makes me really happy to be able to solve those kinds of problems because they're really real problems.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Is there anyone that you can, not clients, but any celebrities that you can say that really look confident in what they're wearing? Like anyone that stands out to you that's kind of an inspiration?
I mean, I could go so broad. First of all, I appreciate you not asking about clients because it's such a personal business.
Yeah.
One of my clients introduced me at a recent event like a few weeks ago, and she was like, I know Laura doesn't dress and tell, which was such a great expression. Because, I work with individuals who are just like you and me, Dwight, right? I dress people like us. I don't dress people on the red carpet. I don't dress celebrities necessarily, but I'm dressing people who want to feel good and get dressed every day.
Yeah.
And so answer that question is a little hard to back into it because I dress such a wide range of people who have such different aesthetics and body types and different ages and different sort of, cultural backgrounds and identities and budgets. So I will say, maybe I can answer this through my lens. And this is maybe so cliche, but I don't really care. I think Kate Middleton knows her style and she knows how to dress when she's walking into different kinds of rooms. And someone may feel totally far-fetched, not related to Kate Middleton by sharing this, but I use her as an example because she can put on some jeans that look really great on her and feel good in a pair of espadrilles or wedges. She can put on an evening wear piece and she knows how she's dressing and she's consistent with what her style is and she exudes confidence. So that's one example. There are so many though, Dwight.
Yeah.
It just depends. Like I would answer this in so many different kinds of rooms. I think that I'm just trying to go through like different lists. I'm going to say, I think Lady Gaga dresses really confidently. That's another example. If we're going to get into the really fashion creative side of this business, she wears super artistic pieces. She's a performer. I mean, I wouldn't normally walk around, in some of the things that she was wearing because it
Yeah.
just wouldn't be right for me. And, they're not very functional.
Yeah.
But she also, shows up on social media, no makeup, really casual in a t-shirt and can express herself as well. So I think when you know how to read the room that you're walking into, no matter what your style, archetype, or aesthetic is, and meet the moment that works for you, but it also meets the moment of the experience, that is a really great example of dressing confidently.
Okay. So how do you, when you have a new client, is there a process that you go through, like a questionnaire of how to understand, like how to tailor their closets or what they do for a living, or if they go into I remember I was a personal shopper for a couple of clients, and there was one client specifically that she was a triathlon participant. She had 3 kids. Her husband worked. He was in finance. He worked like 90 hours a week, and so like she was super busy and didn't have time to shop specifically. And so when I asked her like what her style was, she told me what she wanted to be.
Mm, mm,
But she didn't tell me that in the beginning. She just kind of filled it out and what she would like, and that's what I shop for.
yes.
And it was complete opposite. Like she was not going out every night to, dance. She was not. That's what she wanted to do. But so, how do you tailor their lifestyle to how you work?
That's a great question. And I think that's a really fair point because many of us have aspirational images of who we are and who we want to be. And for me, in the work that I do, we do a few things and it takes time so that it sticks, right? Like you just explained, it took time for you to get to that point. The first thing I do is I have a video call with someone who is either referred to me. I get a lot of referrals from existing clients, which is how I've been able to really grow my business. And my book of clients, which is incredible. And we have a video call and we just make sure, just as much as you as a potential client are feeling me out, I'm also making sure it's the right fit for both of us. Then from there, we set up a 2-hour closet edit. Everybody goes through this that I work with that's a new client. And we do that because I want to, and whether it be in person or virtually, because I work with people in St. Louis, but I have a book of business in New York, in Colorado, and then I work with clients across the country. And I've been in closets virtually with people that I may never even meet in person. So we spend that time together going through what their closet is and evaluating how they're responding to their style. And I do that after I have them fill out a form, because to your point, they fill out a form, which is great. And my approach is very holistic. So what's your shoe size? To what part of your body do you find yourself maybe covering up more or not? Or what prints repulse you, or what colors do you want to stay away from, or what are your personal goals or professional goals, and what kind of travel do you have coming up, what events are on the calendar? So that creates a framework. But being with someone in their closet, which is one of the most vulnerable spaces in all of our lives, truly, there are more vulnerable spaces, of course, but it really is, you're changing your clothes here, you're looking in the mirror, you're evaluating your body, you've got to get dressed to walk out the door and be seen. So going through item by item, we're inspecting, does it fit still? Is it modern, not trendy? Is it modern? Meaning, is it relevant to your lifestyle and where you live? The functionality of it. Are there any holes? Does it need to be altered? Does it fit right? And then certain things start to come up, and I'm taking a lot of notes. I'm absorbing a lot of information in this time together, and people begin to really reveal things in this moment. And it's all about building trust. Like, this, having done this kind of work previously, it is so much about building trust as soon as possible and holding that trust. And it's why it's nice to hear clients who are like, Laura doesn't dress and tell. Because this is really personal stuff and it's nobody's business but myself and the client that I'm working with. And that's where we begin to really unpack more and more real, genuine, authentic information that's vulnerable in a lot of cases. And then we just build over time from there, which, some people I've worked with now for 6, 7 years in my business, and we continue to work together because we've just built a really, really respectful, mutually respectful, beautiful relationship.
So how does the virtual closet work? Like, how does that, yeah, explain that. Well, I'm interested in how that works.
COVID pushed all of us into adapting to virtual settings, which was, not being insensitive, just a little bit of a silver lining, so that people now understood the value and the connection that we can have, like you and I are sitting here in different places talking to each screens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so more people have, been able to onboard on technology much faster now, and they're more willing to do it. So we do the same thing. I have a client literally set their laptop up either in their bedroom or near their closet or in the closet or in the bathroom outside of the closet. And we pull things out and we go through them on camera. They try stuff on, they'll step off to the side. They'll try something on. They'll step back on. We'll look at it. We're inspecting for fit. Now, I have a virtual platform where all of my clients' closets are fully digitized. So the best way to articulate this is like the Clueless closet with Cher. And, from, 25 years ago where her items are individually scrolling. Now it doesn't automatically scroll for anybody. I'm the computer on the backside. Together.
Yeah.
But the clients who are virtual, they upload photos and it's pretty effective. It takes like maybe an hour in most cases, but they spend the time because they're like, I'm investing in myself. I want to do this and I want Laura's help. And they're taking photos. And they all get uploaded on this platform. And then I go in and I mix and match things and I make outfits. And from there, we move into the shopping portion of it. And some people want to do a full seasonal shop where we're, getting a lot of pieces, or they just want to like ease into it. Sometimes people from a budgetary perspective are like, let's just get a few pieces now, get a few pieces in another few months. And sometimes a lot of people like are going through a lot of body changes or transitions. And they're like, let's just ease into this too with new purchases. But this platform allows us to collaborate very effectively, very efficiently. And I say to my clients all the time, don't scroll Instagram in the morning, go scroll your virtual closet so that you can get in a fraction of the time and feel really good about it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. I didn't know that even existed. I'm learning a lot. Man, AI has done so much.
No. AI hasn't done this though. Okay. Let me be clear on that.
Okay.
Let's not confuse the two.
Okay. All right. Oh my God. So you lead seminars and workshops on the science of clothing. We talked about some of this, but what are some of the surprising insights participants take away from fashion influences in personal professional lives?
Sure. One of the biggest ones, which I said before, which is realizing that all of us have style. And just because we have style doesn't mean that we, by definition, are stylish. Sometimes style can be helping us and sometimes style can be hindering us. And it could be day to day. It could be seasonally, we just need to decide. And I think instilling in as many people as possible, knowing that you have style begins to open the door for all of us to say, oh, I do have style and I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do something about it. Let me inquire about it. So I think that's a really important starting point for people to know that we all of us have style, right? So know that and then build from there. The second thing I'd say is that we can use style as a form of connection, not separation with people. We live in a really diverse, dynamic world and country. And I spoke about this in my TED Talk, but style is something for those of us who can see, is a way for us to visually connect with each other and to build very quick, attributes and connections with people based on things that are similar, right? And so we as human beings, we like what we know and therefore are drawn to the things that we know because they're safe and we feel comfortable in them, right? And so when we can walk into a room, maybe we're going to an event or we're going to class and it's the first day and we don't really know anybody, pay attention to like what you gravitate towards, right? And so I could walk in and say, your hat is up. And I saw it when we were, getting ready to talk before. It's got Gent on it, your brand. If you had that on somewhere in person and I didn't know you, I could go up to you and say, that's a really cool hat. I love the bow tie in the E. What is Gent? Tell me about it, right? How easy was that for me to be able to just do that with you right now, right?
Yeah, right.
Or like, that's a really cool necklace you're wearing. What's the story behind it? So I encourage people to know that like we all have style and we can all use it as a way to connect with each other and ourselves.
Yeah. No, that's great. Because I have a lot of friends that say they're not into fashion, but they have a style.
Mhm.
You know, they're not technically in fashion. They don't understand specifically what I do and why I'm in this realm, but well, I'm not in fashion. I can't go to a fashion show. I'm like, no, you have your personal style. You're fine. Yeah, don't, you have to change for me to go to I'm inviting you.
Well, that's a great example though, because you're elaborating on what I was saying before, right? It's
Mhm.
letting people know we all of us have it. So it brings people into it more. It allows us the space to actually explore it and not say, oh, I'm not into fashion. I don't know fashion. I don't understand fashion. But wait, I know style. I have
Mhm.
style. What's your style? What's my style? What does that look like? And it's just shifting the dialogue around a bit more too. And it just brings more people into it. And that's where the connection part for me is really important. There's obviously so many other layers to this too, but I think
Yeah.
those are the really powerful ones that make it about each of us as an individual, but then all of us as a collective too.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. So, we want to talk to some of these, students and aspiring entrepreneurs. What advice would you give students or aspiring entrepreneurs looking to start their own fashion related business? And are there any specific skills they should focus on in your industry?
Well, that's a big question. I
Or you can talk in general too.
Yeah, no,
You
no,
can
no,
talk.
no. Well, I'm thinking of how the best way to answer this. I will go more broadly where I think people who are early in the industry or they're in school and they're studying fashion, maybe for people who aren't as familiar with it, but oftentimes we associate fashion with fashion designers and retailers. And so I am neither one of those things, but I work with both of those groups constantly. So I've never been a fashion designer. I've worked with many of them. I've worked on the brand marketing side. I've been a consultant with brands. It's a massive investment to start a brand as a designer on your own or to be a retailer. So I think it's important that we make sure that a lot of, either young people or students understand there's a tremendous financial investment in that. And I'm not saying that to tell someone to put somebody off by it, but rather to set the expectation to know that if you want to launch it, you should your homework and do your research and be prepared to really, really build something that requires a lot of capital and a lot of energy and focus. Now, if you're a designer not wanting to launch your own brand, I would say don't just focus solely on, sketching or designing, really dig into the technical skills of it. So whether that's like learning how to create a tech pack, learning how to sew. I don't know how to sew, so maybe it's easy for me to tell someone to go learn how to sew. But I think from a trade perspective and a supply chain perspective, globally and also domestically, especially domestically, like we are just losing out on sewers and pattern makers, and we just don't have enough of these people who are skilled at this. And those are great jobs.
Uh,
And I think like any entrepreneur in any industry, I will say this, good entrepreneur, in my opinion, knows how to do all the hard work that everybody else is doing as they build a company for the most part, or they can comprehend it. And then they can decide, okay, maybe this isn't my strength over here, but it is over here. But really understanding and knowing how to do that is a really important skill. I have someone that works with me. I don't do all the things in my business. It's taken me time. I used to have to do all the things,
yeah.
but how they all function and operate. And that's how I'd say anybody who wants to be really great at anything, under a lot of it and then get really narrow on the things that you're really good at too. For someone as a stylist, like me, I was an event designer and marketer for 10 years. And I became a stylist 7 years ago. I worked in retail. I've worked with fashion clients in the past, and I have always used fashion and style as a source of inspiration. Same with artwork, same with architecture and design. They've always been really inspirational tools for me, but I have no formal training as a stylist, except I do now have 7 years of extraordinary work being in hundreds of closets. And on top of that, I listen to the people that I work with. And outside of working with them and operating my business, I spend a lot of time investing in educating and informing myself in this space, not just as a stylist, but in the industry as a whole too.
Right.
Because that's how you're going to be successful. And I've had to work for it. And I
Yeah.
still do, like it's 7 years in and it's just, you reprioritize things and see what works and isn't working and you continue to work, hard at it.
Can you talk about that? Like we always talk about the successes of everything. Can you talk about the hard part of this industry, like in your perspective?
From my perspective, and I'll have coffee with people who are all sorts of different types of, business owners and new entrepreneurs. And they're like, I'm in year 3 and I'm pulling my hair out right now. What am I doing? And I'm like, you just have to stay the course.
Mhm.
You really just have to stay the course because, any kind of entrepreneur, I think there's like some statistic out there that like most businesses fail within the first 5 years or something like that because it gets really hard.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be able to roll your sleeves up and work extra hours. This is not a 9 to 5 job. And I think Roger Federer said it, like he's got some quote where he's like, people tell me all the time, like, oh, you make it look easy. And he's like, oh, if only you knew the 20 years of like, sweat and tears. And, those weren't his exact words. But the reality is that you start with what you know and you build and then you iterate and you keep iterating and getting better at it and you don't stop. And that sometimes requires pushing it extra. And I'm not glorifying the burnout situation here either, because I've been in that world too. But it's not a cakewalk by any means.
Yeah.
We've talked about this previously
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it requires you pulling back. I've had periods of my life in the last 7 years as a stylist where I thought, in the beginning, I launched my business. My mentor was my first client. She saw in me that I had a skill and an eye, and she was like, I want to invite you into my closet. I am, a keynote speaker. I do TV appearances. This is really important to me. She's in the financial services space. And she was like, I want you to come in and help me, get from who I am here to over here so that I'm ready. I don't want to do all the work in between. So help me. That was an extraordinary opportunity that someone saw something in me. It's not always the case with everybody. I recognize that. But I've maintained taking care of that relationship, not just because of business, but also personally. I love this person too. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to start telling people I'm a stylist. This is what I'm doing now. Will you let me come into your closet?
Yeah.
And it's a really scary thing, but you have to do it. People don't know unless you tell them or you ask them.
Yeah.
And, I was also really hustling a lot in the early days too, where I was doing closet work and I was doing commercial styling, whatever came up for me. And I did a few things that, I didn't bill anybody because I was like, I need to build a portfolio. And I want to pause on that because I'm not glorifying that in the fashion industry because we don't have the best track record, fashion as a whole, with having people work for no pay. That's not okay.
Yeah.
For me as an entrepreneur, I was like, I am willing to reach out to this brand in St. Louis at the time who was operating. And I was like, would you be willing to let me do a fashion, a photo shoot with you all so that I can build a portfolio and I can build up, some imagery and use this as marketing to help myself. And so that, and, constantly asking people for testimonials in their closets for people who are willing to share. So I'm sort of bouncing across the board here because that's the point. You just have to be willing to work hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So is some of it a lot of networking involved?
A tremendous
Yeah.
networking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a tremendous amount of networking. It's all about relationships and in anything. And especially, people buy from people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it really is about connecting with people in a really thoughtful way. Networking, let me go into some specifics here. So early on, I got involved in the community in various organizations. One, because I really care about them, but two, because I wanted to meet people who, were like-minded. They were interested in some of the same things, right? And so I continue to be involved with certain organizations that I really care about because I care about them, but also because I am maybe meeting people that I wouldn't necessarily meet through my friend networks. And you have to be willing to show up to things that you're maybe uncomfortable going to. I think that's another like very real thing, just to kind of like peel the curtain back a little bit on this.
Yeah.
You have to be able to tell people what you're doing and ask them, even if that's uncomfortable. You have to be able to show up. And I think specifically from a St. Louis perspective, I learned this as a transplant. St. Louis really takes care of the people that are willing to consistently show up.
Yeah.
You raise your hand and you show up and you show up. And I'm not saying like book every night of your schedule because that's just not realistic because, I like to sleep and I like to read. I
Yes.
like my alone time too. But, being willing to show up as much as possible, people pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And you're going to meet people in different rooms and in different environments. And I just gave everybody a tip on how to connect with someone that maybe you don't know, give them a compliment.
Yeah.
Or, and I should say, allows you to, when the time comes, you've connected with someone and maybe you find out that they know somebody or you want them to introduce you to somebody, but you cultivate the relationship because you don't just ask. It usually doesn't go so well. You've got to be able to cultivate a dynamic together. But that allows you the space to reach out and ask them or tell them the thing that you want to ask or tell them.
Yeah.
Networking is important, but then the other part of that is cultivating the relationship, like I just said.
Yeah.
And spending time checking in with people, supporting them at their events as best as possible. Being invited onto a podcast and sharing it with people in your networks.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses locally that I talk to are like, just, like my photo on Instagram or forward it to somebody. Things like that are really, really valuable. And I think if we're speaking more specifically to people in St. Louis, people are really well connected here. I've learned that very quickly. And it's a really beautiful thing if you know how to respect that and engage in it. And it has only added just tremendous value to me in my business, both on the one-on-one closet, wardrobe styling side and also on the speaking side of it too.
Yeah. So a quick story. So when I started getting into the fashion industry and I was going to all these different events, and this is pre-COVID where everyone went out a little bit more. I made business cards
again. I think they're going out again now.
Yeah. Thank God, because I'm an event business. So I need people to go out. I used to hand out business cards that said fashion expert. And so whatever that person thought that meant is what I would just figure it out and I would do it. Whether it was a personal shopper, whether it was styling a fashion show. I worked in retail for a while, but never done any of that stuff. So and it was an icebreaker. They didn't know what it really meant, but they it was their interpretation of who I was at these different events. Do you think that business cards are a thing of the past, or what do you think about students coming out of college wanting to network? Like, how do they present themselves and leave a mark?
I don't carry business cards anymore since COVID, which is funny because I feel like lately I've been out meeting people and they're like, "Oh, give me your card." And I'm like, "I don't have a card." And then what I usually will say is, let's connect on LinkedIn and I'll send you a message. Let's pull our phone out right now and let's pull a profile up. And maybe students aren't on LinkedIn, but I also am on Instagram. And this is a message to students. I will say, be mindful of what your public profiles look like. People are looking at all of it. And so the way in which you share and show up digitally, especially more publicly, though technically it's all really there, is really important. And that is a way for me to make sure that I met the person, I connected, we followed each other right away. And it guarantees that we much easier, rather than pulling out a card and trying to type someone's phone in, which sounds so sad that I'm even saying it's like an extra step. But we're already then connected digitally, and you can pull your phone up and just send them a quick note and then say, "Hey, it was great to meet you. I'm just glad we're connected now." Because not every new connection requires a coffee meeting or a lunch or whatever. It's just like, let's just stay in touch, And I want to see what you're up to, and I want you to see what I'm up to. So
Yeah.
that is a meaningful way to connect with people.
That's great. That's great.
Cool.
How do you feel about, or how do we keep students in St. Louis? So you talked a little bit about how great St. Louis is and welcoming and the connections that we all have. We have a lot of students specifically in the fashion industry that will leave and go to New York or go to West Coast or go somewhere else and not consider staying here. So it's either start a business or we have a ton of great companies here as well. But how do we get them to stay?
Well, the coasts are really shiny objects, especially in the fashion industry. And understandably, there's a lot of opportunity, right? There's a dense population of jobs available, compared to maybe here in this industry. I moved here 10 years ago. I didn't plan to go into styling when I first moved here. It was always a dream, but, dreams do come true.
Right.
And St. Louis actually has allowed me the space and the opportunity to thrive in my business, which always, I think, wonderfully surprises a lot of people when I tell them. One, as we know, cost of living here is much better compared to other cities. Two, I'm a very specific kind of business and saw an opportunity in the market to launch this with my interest, obviously, along with it as well. So it's allowed me to, I think, connect with people. I want to make sure I back into your question thoughtfully, which is how to get people to stay here, which is a really hard challenge. I don't know that I can solve that for all of the, businesses because, there are jobs here. There just aren't maybe as many when we're comparing them. But I think, if you're starting something here, this is a great place to do it. I'll answer it that way. My husband is in the tech space. He came here 20 years ago to go to WashU, launched a business as an undergrad, stayed, and rather than going back to New York where he grew up, and being in the technology space, rather than going to the West Coast or maybe Austin, which it wasn't quite, what it is now today as it was then, but he decided to stay here because he had built such an incredible network here and because of the cost of living. So, there are very impressive people in this community and in a lot of communities in the Midwest. And I always love to, say to people like, St. Louis has a lot going on here. We have a lot of things that are happening. You just need to sort of like work it a little bit more and work a little bit harder and reach out to people and really leverage the network and get plugged into it and try. And you may not get it the first time or the second time, but you just have to be relentless and keep trying. And I think maybe, that's one of the many reasons why, people maybe leave here and go to these other cities in this industry because there is, I mean, if we're looking at it from a numbers perspective, there's more opportunity.
Yeah.
But, I'd say if you're starting something, this is a very cost-effective place to be.
Yeah.
And I can get on an airplane in 15 minutes, from my house, or I can get to the airport, I should say, in 15 minutes from my house and, be in New York and be in Chicago and be in, Texas and Colorado and Southern California, really like much faster than, being on either end of the coast.
Right. That's a good point. It's a really good point. If you can run a business here and just travel where you need to go.
Absolutely. And I just talked for like 40 minutes basically on like the benefits of being able to be virtual or rather hybrid too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Cause you did
I can speak from experience here, Dwight. Like you and I know this. Whoever's listening, if you're like, I'm striking out, there is an industry here. It is maybe not as big as New York or, LA, but there is an industry here within fashion. And, there may not be a lot of big brands or designers. There are a few though. But there are people who are, we all make up the ecosystem of the industry. And I'm one of those kinds of people. And not everyone necessarily thinks of a stylist right away, when they think of fashion. Maybe some do if they're into fashion, but not always.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. You did the opposite. You were in New York and you came here.
Proof right here, you know?
You're a great example. And you're very successful.
I will tell you, it's because I have and continue to really cultivate my relationships in a really thoughtful way.
Yeah.
it's like really that is what has served me the most. It's referrals from clients in their closets. It's, these are people who are also decision makers in organizations and, various sort of like, industry associations who are hiring me to come in and speak as well.
Yeah.
It's, people that I meet in the community like us who, we could potentially introduce each other to someone that would be of benefit, and it just like, it feeds the whole collective.
Yeah,
That's what makes it work.
that's great. That's great. All right. So I have two more questions for you, and they are not fashion or business related at all.
I also have a life outside of fashion and television.
Yeah, that's what we're going to dig into. So, what is your favorite animal?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Digging
cats.
deep.
Cat.
Cats, your favorite? Do you have it? Do you have cats?
I'm a cat. I'm a cat. I'm a cat. I'm no shame about it. I'm a cat. His name is Remy. He's awesome. They're just so snuggly. They're, they get on you, they purr, when you're feeling a little stressed or you're a little tired, they're home, they want to love on you, most cats. And yeah, they're just little fur balls and they're smart too.
Yeah.
This is no shade to dog people. I love dog people. Dogs are great. I grew up with
Yeah.
dogs. Cats are just something a little extra about them. And they make you work for it a little bit too, which, maybe that's just a personality thing. I'm revealing a little bit more.
Because dogs don't make you work for it. Like,
No offense to dogs. They don't.
Yeah. No,
There's a lot of love for dogs. I don't want to upset the dog people. Okay.
Let's see. Favorite childhood memory.
Skiing White Face Mountain. I was 6 years old. It was a blizzard and it kind of came on abruptly and I was with my dad and my two brothers. And I remember having very minimal visibility in front of me. And my dad was just like, you can do this, Laura. And I'm going to get you a trophy when after you get to the bottom, when we get home and we're all settled and you're going to reflect on this moment, I'm going to get you a trophy, which I don't know why I remember that part in particular, but it was really just like I was young and I felt very brave and I was doing my favorite thing in the world. And that's to ski. I think I mentioned I was an athlete growing up and I was a competitive downhill skier. So it was a great moment.
So, wait, so how long did you ski? How long you were competitive?
Well, I started skiing when I was 2 and I raced for 5 years. And this is a fun plug. My brothers, I have 2 older brothers and 5 and 3 years older than me. And I was in 8th grade and I was the same mountain at ski practice in Southern New York State. And their coach was like, who just skied down the mountain just now? My brothers were like, oh, it's our sister, Laura. And then was like, I want her to come next time she comes at the top of the lift. I want to talk to her and I want to see if she can run gates. And I did. And so I was able to start skiing, with like the varsity ski team in 8th grade and really start training. And it was a really fun time.
That is cool. That's something I didn't know about you.
I also got to challenge my older brothers, which
was
awesome.
Yeah. So you've been competitive your whole life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't deny it.
I can tell.
I think it's why becoming an entrepreneur for me, though really scary in the beginning. And, I married an entrepreneur, which helped and was very, he was helpful in the coaching, like, you've got this, we can do this, make it happen. But I think once I sort of like crossed that hurdle, now I'm like, okay, let's do this, bring it on. And nice. I think mostly I compete against myself. I want to be better. I want to get better. And that's not to put myself down, but I'm always thinking, there are moments that are worth celebrating, and that's really important. And there are moments that are worth recovering and resting. But then there are also moments worth reflecting on and allowing you to use that as growth. And we can have a whole other conversation about just like the influence of sports in business and in our personal lives.
Oh, yeah.
Intersection is really tremendous. So being a competitive downhill skier has really taught me how to be a good entrepreneur and a good person who just wants to continue to grow in life. And I played soccer, by the way, which I don't think you knew.
I didn't know that either.
Yes. Left fullback. Oh, I was a defender.
No way. That's great. Did you get any fights?
I have 2 red cards.
Great.
We shouldn't be proud of that. I'm not endorsing that. Okay.
That's great. Coaching for 25 years, I'm seeing kids that are now in college, and sports does put something into you
Oh yeah.
that makes you super successful and understand like teamwork and like confidence and just competitiveness. It's very inspirational. My kids inspire me, after I see, them grow up. It's pretty cool. It's very
It is
cool to
cool.
see. Yeah.
It is cool.
You were did not know anything. Okay, cool. This is good. Just wanted to talk about that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's
Thank
been
you.
very fun, and I've been super excited to talk to you about the psychology of fashion, which is very interesting to me. Can you give us all of your social and website and all that information?
Yes, I'm just gonna send people to my website where they can find everything else, and I'm gonna do that because my last name has to be spelled out, which I'm sure it'll be in the show notes too. But
Yeah.
it's Laura, Laura, K as in Catherine, and then Sawyer is spelled SAWYIER.com.
Yeah.
And you'll get my newsletter there, my Instagram, you'll find it all there. I have a really unique last name, so you can find me just by, typing it
Yeah.
into Google if you needed to.
Yeah, it's funny that when I met you, I've known your husband for a long time, like probably before you met.
I know a lot of people in St. Louis who tell me that. And then it's like the moment where they're like, I didn't put you two together. And I was like, well, that happens. Understandable. The I in Sawyer usually gets people.
Yeah, it's funny. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, listening. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thanks, Dwight.